Death by starvation or death by bullets. It's an impossible and nightmare scenario, but this is the reality many in Gaza are facing. Attacks at aid distribution sites have killed hundreds of desperate Palestinians. Horrifying scenes repeat themselves over and over. Handouts turned into killing fields, and many who risk the trip there return empty-handed. I'm Stefanie Dekker, and this is The Street.
يدوروا على شيء ياكلوه، شيء واضح، يدوروا على شيء ياكلوه. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF for short, has controversially overseen most aid distribution in Gaza since late May. Recently created and backed by the US and Israel, it operates at only 4 distribution sites, but often only one is operational. Before its creation, there were over 400 aid distribution sites in Gaza, but the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has been sidelined in the process. So, after this change, how is Gaza receiving aid today? Well, we're joined by Eman Hillis, a fact-checker and writer, and she joins us from Gaza City. Eman, thank you so much for taking the time. It is impossible for any of us outside of Gaza to understand what it is like for you. Explain to me, what are these aid sites like, the GHF? How does it operate? How do you see it?
Thank you, Stefanie. Actually, the GHF is a foundation that distributes, or it alleges that it distributes aid to Gazans. But what really happens is that there's no distribution operation at all. Aid is just put on the ground, and people are just rushing to the aid so that they can take whatever they want. There's no distribution at all. A strong man can take whatever he wants, and the weak, there are many women and many elderly going to the GHF to get aid. They can't get any food or any aid. So it's just aid meant for the strong people in Gaza, for the looters, for those who are armed with knives, and there's no distribution at all.
You wrote a very powerful op-ed for Al Jazeera where you said, "I would rather starve than take aid from the GHF." Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
To put you on the image, Gaza is being starved. Since Israel blocked aid entry on 2 March, food started to run out in the markets gradually. And the little available in the markets are very expensive. So when the GHF started working, they announced that all the sites of the GHF are located along the Israeli corridors inside the Strip. 3 along the Murad corridor in Rafah and 1 along the Nessouli corridor, the same corridor that Israel soldiers used as a zone for indiscriminate killing before the January truce. So why does the world expect a starving Gazan to head to a militarized zone, lose an arm or a leg, or get fatally injured, or even lose their life just to get some canned food or a pack of flour that would eventually run out within a week? Why did the world normalize us being starved and has no problem with seeing Gazans getting shot for food? Just look at the way the GHF is functioning, and you'll know that this foundation was never meant to innocently deliver humanitarian relief to Gazans. Personally, after a long period of surviving solely on lentils, we became weak and only wanted to eat properly just once. So we considered the option of heading to the GHF site at the Nazarene corridor. I asked my friends who went there, and they told me there's actually no distribution at all, as I told you.
You used to have UNRWA, you used to have aid distribution sites, which were, relatively well organized. Why do you think this change has happened? It sounds like everything has become so much worse, it's become impossible.
Because Israel is just blaming Hamas, and they are accusing Hamas of looting aid, and they are just, I don't know, they are just not satisfied with UNRWA and other relief humanitarian groups to function in Gaza. So this GHF is enabled by Israel, and um, shooting and killing are, shooting and killing is very common on these sites. The Interior Ministry in Gaza just yesterday it claimed that they saw many people being investigated by the GHF. I'm sorry, by Israeli soldiers and at the GHF sites. So they are accusing the GHF of cooperating with Israel.
How are you surviving?
To tell you honestly, 4 months after Israel blocked all aid, we barely find anything to eat. The little available food is extravagantly pricey. Flour for bread, for example, the simplest and most important thing on the Palestinian table equals 70 shekels per kilo, which is $9 per pound. This is 70 times its normal price before the war. Just try to imagine a kilo of sugar equals 20 shekels, which is $27 per pound. Nearly nobody in Gaza could buy enough food for their family at such prices. You are talking about the Gaza Strip, which has been at war for nearly 2 years. Most Gazans lost their source of income, and every one of us evacuated multiple times and were forced to spend our savings. The only available products in the markets right now are lentils, hummus, and a very few amount of canned food. Of course, prices are changing and rising every day as food becomes scarcer. Every day I see people, pale elderly people and young people fainting in the streets because of malnutrition.
Eman, thank you so much for joining us from Gaza City today. Such an important voice directly out of Gaza, what it is like and why isn't more being done to stop it. Well, we are going to shift our conversation now. We're joined by Tamara Al Rifai. She's the Director of External Relations for UNRWA, which delivered food to 1.9 million people during the war before it was banned by Israel. She joins us from Cairo. And we also have Afeef Nessouli, a journalist who was in Gaza recently volunteering with GLIA International, a humanitarian organization providing medical aid. He joins us from Atlanta, Georgia in the US. Afeef, I want to start with you. You went into Gaza as an aid worker, but you're actually a journalist, right? And you said you were doing research there also into the GHF. What did you see? What did you learn about what's happening there under the current circumstances?
Well, thank you first for having me, but I want to address the fact that the GHF has greatly reduced the access to food by 400 sites that were with the UN-backed systems to 4. I mean, imagine 400 sites existing for aid distribution and being reduced to 4. So what I learned were my sources, patients that we were working with were getting shot at. A lot of doctors that I shadowed and documented were seeing bullet wounds to the head, bullet wounds to the back. Sometimes they seemed targeted, and other times they seemed like they were random shots by a machine gun, sort of showering the crowd. I have barely spoken to anyone who has actually received aid. I have spoken to many people who have been afraid of the fact that not only is it dangerous for them to go to the aid distribution sites because of the actual soldiers shooting on the crowds, but also because if you do get aid, you're now then pitted against one another because you've been hungry for 4 months. So what I've learned is sort of a range of different things, and none of them seem at all justifiable. And so I sit here sort of dumbfounded at the idea that this is even happening. And it sort of leads me to believe that there must be something we don't understand about the GHF or the sort of mechanisms that the US and Israel want to put forward that are more technical, or they're investing in infrastructure or weapons that they might want to understand their use for some other thing in the future.
That segues into Tamara. Tamara, you work for UNRWA, the UN Palestinian Agency for Refugees. It's been part and parcel of working inside Gaza for many, many years because Palestinians in Gaza needed aid before this happened due to the blockade. It used to work, even though it was extremely difficult under the current war. You've been sidelined, it seems, as the agency, of course. Describe a little bit about what has happened to your operations.
In a nutshell, a functioning, principled aid system, the UN system, including UNRWA, the largest humanitarian agency in Gaza, was replaced by a deadly scam called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that is everything but humane and humanitarian. It inflicts humiliation on starving Gazans once they queue inside cages to pick up food. It kills Gazans who then have to choose between starving or risking being shot at. 875 Palestinians have been killed so far. We see this, as you rightly mentioned earlier, as an attempt by the government of Israel to sideline UNRWA in particular, and to sideline the international, the multilateral, the truly humanitarian system. Dismantling UNRWA, discrediting UNRWA has been part and parcel of the war by Israel in the last now almost 650 days. UNRWA is a UN agency, and our colleagues, nearly 12,000 Palestinian colleagues, are still running the health sector in Gaza. They're still managing over 100 shelters. They are still working on solid waste management to avert bigger public health crises. UNRWA continues to work in Gaza against the odds.
The next question that I will wait, I wanted to ask you what your colleagues are telling you, because exactly, you still have so many, even though Israel has killed the highest amount of UNRWA employees ever in the course of this war, in the history of the organization. Afeef, the GHF, these are in military sites. They're mostly in the south. Can you describe a little bit to our audience about their location? I mean, people still live in northern Gaza. We just spoke to Eman, she's in the north, but these sites are not there, so people cannot get to them easily.
Right. I think one of the most important things to know about this is that there's only 4 of them. If you're in Gaza City and you have to go to Rafah or the Netzarim corridor, you're going sort of several kilometers out of your way. There's not fuel to take cars. Also, they're going through red zones, which means that if you do take a car, Israel's just going to, if you go from the north to the south, it's very dangerous. Israel will just target you because that's against their rules. So imagine being starving. You've eaten maybe 1 meal in the last couple of days. That's quite typical at this point. You're walking or you're getting on a tuk-tuk that is driven by a donkey. It's basically a cart. And you're traveling several kilometers to a place like Eman said before. There's no distribution. There's just aid sort of placed about. These parcels are about $1.30 worth of goods, and there's not enough of them. So you have all of these people traveling. There's some people that wait before the night before. They wake up extremely early. I have a source that was there by 5 a.m. Already in line with people who were barefoot, people who are starving, women, children. So it's very undignified in its sort of, even just on its face. But then it's extremely violent because all of these people inherently know that they're going to something that is going to be more or less their negotiation with death. It's actually, are you going to die of starvation or are you going to die of a bullet? And a lot of these people are making these several mile long walks towards a death circus just for the possibility of getting a bag of flour or pasta or just something that they desperately need. So I think ultimately what you're dealing with here is just not enough sites and a mechanism that is immensely unjustifiable. There is just no way that this mechanism or that the GHF's replacement of the UN-backed systems makes any sense at all unless you really think that they're using these machineries, these mechanisms, these weapons, these control, these mechanisms of control for something that we just don't understand that might come in the future.
It is absolutely baffling, and even though there's been condemnation, the world isn't really doing anything to change it. Now, you were talking there about starvation. Of course, people in Gaza have large families, a lot of children, and we do also have to ask that the aid going into Gaza, is it even suitable for children? Listen to this.
Lentil soup is also a heavy meal for a little child like Shad, who is only 1 year old. Even we adults can no longer stand it. It upsets our stomach. Feeding it to her is an unbearable struggle. She runs into the street, crying and spitting it out, refusing to eat the lentil soup. When she sees the lentil soup, she starts running left and right, screaming and refusing to eat. Sometimes she sleeps hungry. Other times, I'm forced to raise my voice and be a bit harsh with her, so she'll calm down and sleep. She falls asleep in tears.
Now, another issue facing Palestinians is that when food is available, it has become unaffordable. Watch this.
I'm gonna tell you how much basic food costs right now in Gaza. Let's start with sugar. $55 per kilogram, but it used to be around $1 before the war. Cooking oil, $30 per 1 liter, and it was $2. Vegetables, over $15 per kilogram, and before the war it was just $1. And the flour, $25 per kilogram. It used to be just $1, and this loaf of bread, it cost around $2. Something that used to cost a few cents before all of this.
Tamara, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit as a humanitarian. It seems that nobody seems to be able to stop it. Not the United Nations, not the ICC, not the ICJ. It seems that nothing is really being done.
What frustrates me immensely is that we have the data. 1 in 10 children screened by UNRWA medical staff in the last 7 months show signs of malnutrition. 1 child is killed in Gaza every hour. That equates, let's say, a classroom of children being killed every day in Gaza. This is probably the most live documented conflict, recent conflict, despite the ban by the government of Israel on international media. So yes, it is immensely frustrating to see the unfolding of this war with all the grave violations of international humanitarian law. It also frustrates me that inside the UN, the different instruments are mobilized: the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, the UN General Assembly, the different UN rapporteurs, the different UN humanitarian agencies have all been united in their position on the situation in Gaza, on the impact on civilians. We have not shied away from saying things as they are on Gaza. So it's immensely frustrating that then politically, the kind of pressure that would deter the government of Israel from pushing ahead with this level of of violations of international law, that the kind of pressure that would deter isn't yet there. It is immensely frustrating because what we're seeing now, including that war on UNRWA, is a huge challenge by the government of Israel towards the international system, the international law, the standard humanitarian principles that the international community believed in when it established the UN and the Geneva Conventions and the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. That system is being challenged.
challenge, and honestly, sometimes you ask whether anything can be done at all. Even the UN Special Rapporteur, correct, is being now sanctioned by the United States because she's been sounding the alarm about everything that is so unacceptable and wrong, what's happening in Gaza. Afeef, you've been investigating the GHF. You've alluded a little bit to what you think is going on. In a sort of synopsis, what is it that you have found? Who are they? Why are they there?
I believe that they're there because they are trying to justify a new world order, right? Like, we are looking at people who don't have cash. I was there from March 27th to June 3rd. Even I didn't have the ability to have cash. You have a market that has not enough goods and they're all exorbitant prices. You have a system that is being replaced for a system that is sort of manufactured and created by a warring party and its number one backer. Why else would this occur? They're going to tell you that it's because of Hamas. But the way that I have seen it while I was in Gaza, and the way that I'm speaking to my sources, and the way that this is all unfolding, really sort of forwards the notion that there are mechanisms of surveillance, there are mechanisms of control. The drones were both extremely loud. Sometimes they spoke to us. Sometimes they shot people down. The bombs were incessant. There is an entirely robust economy for these weapons and this machinery. We look at this war as challenging a system, but I look at this war as creating not only this war, but this genocide is a symbol of a new world order that companies that are AI driven, that are tech first, are starting to invest in systems of control and surveillance. And I think the GHF is there as to be a battle-tested sort of mechanism that they're trying out. And I have, very little evidence to say that I can prove this sort of thing, but it really is.
Israel says that
evident
soldiers don't shoot at Palestinians and say that it's there to bypass Hamas looting. What do you say to that?
I say that that's just a weak argument. I think that there's been reports in Haaretz where they've been given directives. They've been given specific directives to shoot on the crowds. I think that always blaming a people, sort of holding an entire group, collectively punishing an entire group for the idea of an actor that was the governor of that group is just a lie. I didn't witness that in my time there, and I have not heard that from my sources who aren't necessarily pro-Hamas. So it's not that there is. It seems to be that there's an entire story they're making up to make sure that this robust mechanism is able to keep sort of unfolding and sort of troubleshoot its problems with the cost of killing people. And nearly 1,000 people have died since May because of this. And it's all just seemingly because a lot of very important rich men are investing in this mechanism and in mechanisms like this because maybe that's
sorry, I'm going to jump in there because we're running out of time, Afeef. I want to put one more question to Tamara. And again, there was a system in place that was functioning. Tamara, my last question to you. Have we all collectively failed the Palestinians in a way? Have we become used to, almost 2 years on, seeing these images? They seem to get worse week by week, month by month. Have we all collectively failed the Palestinians?
It's a little bit of an unfair question because collectively there are so many of us working to support the Palestinians in Gaza and working for a greater picture of getting the Palestinians to their different rights, including the right of self-determination. However, we do not have the tools that a couple of countries have. So for instance, I find it mind-boggling that we now hear from Israeli officials terms such as transfer, concentration, camps, transit area, temporarily reside in that Gaza humanitarian city in order to be de-radicalized and then prepared to relocate. This is a new Nakba. It is forced displacement. UNRWA has witnessed this since the beginning of the war. So to your question to Afeef earlier, why is the GHF being put in place this way? For us at UNRWA, having witnessed the destitution and displacement of Palestinians since 1949, 1950, What's happening in Gaza is yet another forced displacement.
I think that's a very strong point to end it on. Tamara and Afeef, thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for being part of the conversation. And I'll see you soon.